Hello everybody, welcome to my channel, The Real Super Sam. Today is a new video and I hope you enjoy. Everyone, we have just gotten to the 1,000 subscribers mark for the Real Super Sam YouTube channel. Thank you all so much for, liking the video, commenting, just even subscribing and watching it. This is an amazing moment for the channel and for me, I've tried to do YouTube once a few times before, and it just never really worked out. But this channel has definitely gotten something, and getting 1,000 subscribers make me more motivated to make videos. So yeah, this is an amazing time. Thank you. Today, for the 1,000 subscribers on the channel, I'm going to give you my list on the top 25. Yes, instead of top 20, I'm going to do top 25 Spider-Man stories. There are just so many good stories I want to share with you guys that I have read. There is a lot of times when Spider-Man and Peter Parker's life collide, or they argue, and Peter Parker decides to give up being Spider-Man or questions his moral decisions, and that's are the stories I actually like the most, just to give you a little bit of a heads up. For some honorable mentions or runner-ups is the Spider-Man vs. Doc Ock storyline that ran in The Amazing Spider-Man Annual 13 and the Spectacular Spider-Man Annual 1. It is one of my favorite Dr. Octopus stories and one of Spidey's biggest, longest battles that shows Peter Parker doing stuff he never had done before and ending with the supposed death of Doc Ock. Another issue, just a single issue, is the Spectacular Spider-Man issue 96 that brings everything together that had been happening ever since issue 89, the Kingpin, the Answer, Cloak and Dagger dealing with Silvermane, the return of the classic Spider-Man suit instead of the symbiote, and all this taking place when it snowed in July in Marvel Comics. This actually took place right after Amazing Spider-Man issue 258 where he got rid of the black suit. Another runner-up is the very first Spectacular Spider-Man issue. It is a very fast-paced, mysterious, and unique comic. The Tarantula of all rogues is the villain, and it starts a 3-issue storyline leading to the Light Master's first appearance. I've read this comic so much that I've memorized lines from it, actually. The Lizard is my fourth favorite Spider-Man rogue, and this is his greatest story in my opinion, and it also has the Amazing Spider-Man issue, is celebrating Spidey's 30-year anniversary. With that said, there are also so many other Spider-Man stories I love, like issues 238 and 239, the Hobgoblin's first appearance, and issues 66 and 67, where Mysterio seems to turn into a giant. I also like this story, Another Return of the Sinister Six. It is my favorite Sinister Six story ever. But this list is about Spider-Man stories, about which stories I think are best to read about the character, and here we go. Number 25 is the whole Spider-Man cosmic storyline. It is one of the most unique times in Spider-Man's life, and seeing Spider-Man as strong as Superman while still having the same problems is very entertaining. There's also, during one of my favorite Marvel comic storylines of all time, Acts of Vengeance, where the superheroes are fighting villains they barely know. But Spider-Man, well, he doesn't have to worry. He's so strong here, he punches the Hulk into space, then he has to fly up there and save his life at one moment. And of course, this has the moment where Spider-Man doesn't just get possessed, but actually becomes Captain Universe. Number 24 is The Amazing Spider-Man, issues 147 through 149, showing the last Golden Age Jackal appearances. Oh yeah, and I'm not going to do title slides before each story, because that would be a waste of time, I think. So I'm just going to continue the episode like this. This story's main villain is the Jackal, who I've always really loved his old appearances. He was almost Spider-Man's greatest enemy after Green Goblin died, and this story sure shows him at his greatest. We get Professor Miles Warren's origin story and history with cloning here. Which, yep, this sort of started the whole Clone Saga debacle. Actually, I don't actually really hate the Clone Saga story, but here we see the end of the clone of Gwen Stacy for a while, and the first appearance of Ben Reilly, who later becomes Scarlet Spider. Tarantula also had his best moments here for me, with great artwork and a crazy Spidey story. I have always looked forward to reading this one. Number 23 is Marvel Team Up Issue 1, when the Sandman in a new suit fights Spider-Man and the Human Torch on Christmas Eve. Yes, Christmas, my favorite holiday, my favorite Spider-Man Christmas story, and Sandman, who used to be my favorite Spider-Man villain, is there in the issue, a perfect matchup for me. Also, Christmas stuff happens which has me like this issue even more. Spider-Man and Human Torch are always great together. Either Human Torch or Daredevil, one of them are my favorite heroes to see Spidey team up with. The ending is even heartfelt, with Spider-Man giving Sandman his gift to Gwen so he can give it to his mom. Number 22 is The Amazing Spider-Man issues 136 and 137, the first appearance of the second Green Goblin. Peter Parker's greatest enemy has returned, who now knows the truth about Norman Osborn, meaning they know the truth about Peter Parker. The fighting and the art are my favorite out of any Green Goblin story. It is seriously good. I like Harry Osborn Green Goblin stories more than Norman's. He's more straight and dangerous to his family and friends here, and during this, Spider-Man is in a giant predicament. Not just the fact that Osborn knows he's Peter Parker, but the fact that this new foe is his best friend. Number 21 is kind of a long story happening in the Spectacular Spider-Man issue 72 through 79, covering the Owl Octopus War, Spider-Man fighting the Gladiator, and the destruction of Dr. Octopus. This story has so many of my favorite Spider-Man moments in it. The relationship between Spider-Man and the Black Cat, the Owl Octopus War, Spider-Man facing the Gladiator, who is my favorite Daredevil villain, and the end of Dr. Octopus not fearing Spider-Man. This is some of the biggest battles between Doc Ock and Spidey, some of the biggest moments and best moments with Jean DeWolf being involved. Spider-Man having to protect Black Cat from Doc Ock. There is so much tension and danger in every page of this adventure. I almost put this as one of my top 5 Dr. Octopus stories, and it is a must-read, I would say. Number 20, top 20 now, is The Amazing Spider-Man issue 249 through 251, the end of the original Hobgoblin saga. This is the Hobgoblin's 4th story in comics, and it makes such a great impact here. Hobgoblin has a plan to reveal all of these upper-class citizens' little secrets, and Spider-Man has to stop Hobgoblin from doing that to people like Harry Osborn and J. Jonah Jameson. The relationship improving between Peter Parker and Harry Osborn, and then also Spider-Man and Jameson, are some of the best parts of the issues. The Hobgoblin was also ended at the end of the story, since Spider-Man and him go into a river together and he gets Hobgoblin's mask, so yes, this tale was super epic, and the drawings were really good and enjoyable, seriously, because Hobgoblin makes so many funny faces in it as well. Number 19 is a Mysterio or Mysterio's story in Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man issues 11 through 13. Okay, so Mysterio is my favorite Spider-Man villain, so the Spider-Man story, one of the first ones I ever read, the story that has 3 Mysterios in it, is going to be one of my favorite Spider-Man stories ever from my lifetime. It is not just the villains that I like. This happens shortly after Spider-Man has revealed his identity during Civil War, and is a school teacher where Flash Thompson is the gym coach. Also, Peter has his Iron Spider outfit here, making the shots much more powerful. I also say that Mysterio's powers are put to their fullest here, and it also has a Tobey Maguire joke in it. This is still my second favorite Mysterio story ever because it has so many surprises, shockers, and emotions that any good story should have. 18 is the first appearance of the Sinister Six in The Amazing Spider-Man Annual 1. This is one of the Spider-Man's greatest moments even to date. Here he loses his powers but still decides to go and do the right thing and fight his greatest challenge yet, the Sinister Six. The Sinister Six are great here, and they pick the best Spider-Man villains for the first group: Dr. Octopus, Vulture, Electro, Mysterio, and Kraven, and Sandman. This story was very important since this group never returned for over a decade. There are so many great superheroes from Marvel at the time in this story too, and some great interactions with all of Peter Parker / Spider-Man's best supporting characters. My 17th favorite story is titled Carnage in The Amazing Spider-Man issue 361 through 363. This is Carnage's first appearance and has Spider-Man team up with Venom. I like this more than any other Spider-Man story than Maximum Carnage. Here, Spidey has to stop a pure evil monster while working with another one, Venom. Carnage is stronger than Spider-Man and Venom combined, and during this time, Venom becomes a bit more relatable and acts like a hero, even when in the end, Spider-Man kind of betrays him. This is such a crazy Spider-Man moment in history, making it one of my favorite stories of Spider-Man's. Number 16 is in Spectacular Spider-Man issues 186 through 188 called Funeral Arrangements. This is the greatest Vulture story ever and one of the best Spider-Man stories. It is very few times Peter Parker himself gets in on the action, and here, he and his Aunt May get targeted by one of Spider-Man's oldest enemies, the Vulture. In the very end of the story is one moment I really love. The Vulture has a shocking ending where he wishes he was dead, and Aunt May also visits him in jail and leaves behind some chilling words. This is a great moment in Spider-Man history, and surprisingly also shows some great parts of the Vulture never shown before. The 15th favorite for me is the Spectacular Spider-Man issues 107 through 110, The Death of Jean DeWolf. Yep, the famous Jean DeWolf storyline with the Sin Eater and Daredevil, and if you haven't read it, it really is good. It is one of the darkest Spider-Man stories and most human as well. In here, the Rogue is the villain Sin Eater, who basically is a semi-super strong man with a shotgun who runs around and kills more important figures in the law like in Manhattan. Also, I love the black suit for Spider-Man. It's not the symbiote suit here, but leather, the ones that he started wearing from issue 265. Here, it fits so well having him in the black suit. The same thing goes when I talk about Kraven's Last Hunt series. This number 14 is the Symbiote Saga and the Amazing Spider-Man run from issues 252 to 258. This is the original Black Suit Saga, the symbiote one, running in the Amazing Spider-Man title, of course. During this time, so many supervillains that are underrated or forgotten show up here, either their first appearances like the Rose and Puma, or early appearances like Jack-O-Lantern and Black Fox. At times, the Hobgoblin's little side plot even shows up too. Just like so many know, the symbiote turns out it is alive and bad. Instead of going to the bell tower to get rid of the symbiote, here, in the actual comic, the Fantastic Four help get it off. Later, he goes to the bell tower in Web of Spider-Man issue 1, but anyway. Having some of the best art in the series, this has Spider-Man act like classic Spider-Man and interact with everyone important during this time in his life. The symbiote actually didn't turn him emo or evil in the story. That's probably why this story is so high on my list. The 13th story is The Amazing Spider-Man issue 4. This is the first appearance of the Sandman, one of my favorite supervillains ever. I love his powers, and this issue shows them all off nicely here. During his first fight with Sandman, he loses his mask, and only a teenage superhero like Spider-Man would worry about little stuff like that affect him. This moment right here shows why he is such a great character. This is one of my favorite Stan Lee, Steve Ditko Spider-Man stories, and it is just a perfect little Spider-Man tale. In 12th place is The Amazing Spider-Man issue 50, Spider-Man No More. If you didn't know, Spider-Man 2 is my favorite movie, and the movie's main plot is based off this one issue. Here, Peter Parker has decided that being Spider-Man is no longer worth it, and maybe he has already lived up to his responsibility, or at least he has a responsibility to the people in Peter Parker's life too, not just Spider-Man's. A lot of parts here are done in the Spider-Man 2 movie, like Jameson having Spidey's suit, Peter doing well in class when he stops being Spider-Man. The ending is what really makes this issue fantastic, when Spider-Man saves a security guard who reminds him of Uncle Ben, and that reminds Peter Parker why he is Spider-Man in the first place. Number 11 is The Amazing Spider-Man issues 239 and 230, where Spider-Man has to stand up to the X-Men villain Juggernaut. The X-Men villain Juggernaut comes to Manhattan going after Madam Web, who he plans to help make him become invincible to help kill the X-Men, but Spider-Man, in one of his toughest battles ever, tries to do the impossible and stop the unstoppable Juggernaut. One of Spider-Man's greatest battles of all time is shown here, and his very interesting morals of never giving up and always going on is here in fold. The last few pages of the fight have Spider-Man just getting beat down by Juggernaut and his costume torn up, while he continues fighting to drag him down into the cement, and this shows off why Spider-Man is one of the greatest heroes ever in my opinion. And here we are to the top 10, and what better to kick it off than the death of Gwen Stacy and Green Goblin, The Amazing Spider-Man issues 121 and 122. One of the most shocking moments in stories and comics, the death of Gwen changed things for the hero forever, a haunting experience that Spidey thinks back to all the time. The story at the time was also very cool, especially the insaneness of the Green Goblin and Spider-Man lashing out and hunting down Norman. In a way, I think this moment is also very important, since Spider-Man admits to himself that he wanted Goblin's death to not just be an accident, and that he feels nothing different when the guy dies. The story is iconic, and it deserves to be. Number 9, you guessed it, would be on this list, one of the greatest just plain stories ever made, Spider-Man's first appearance in Amazing Fantasy issue 15. Yep, this is Spider-Man's origin story, where Peter Parker gets bit by a radioactive spider, uses his new powers for himself, which purposefulness results in his uncle getting murdered, and it turns from revenge to crime fighting as Spider-Man. I'm gonna say everybody knows the whole story, and why it is so good, and at the time, a very different type of superhero figure. Spider-Man is in the top 3 superheroes ever, and one of the reasons is he is a very relatable character, which makes him more interesting and the story more widely liked and remembered, especially for me. For my 8th favorite Spider-Man story, I had to go with Dr. Octopus's first issue in Amazing Spider-Man issue 3. This is another story on my list that has many Spider-Man firsts here. Spider-Man gets easily defeated by Dr. Octopus, and he questions if he will ever be Spider-Man again. I mean, he just lost. He had never lost a fight before then. It isn't until the Human Torch shows up at his high school and gives an inspirational speech about never giving up. Doc Ock has his origin in one of the biggest master plans in all of comics at the time here too. Only Spider-Man can stop him in time, and it leads to a great brains over brawn battle against him, and in my opinion, Dr. Octopus is Spider-Man's greatest enemy, so this story gets better with time. There is a funny typo here where Doc Ock calls Spidey Superman. I just love this single issue so much, and I find it a really good example of Spider-Man being Spider-Man. In 7th place is the giant final battle between Peter Parker and Harry Osborn in the spectacular Spider-Man issue 200. This is the big conclusion between Peter Parker and Harry Osborn rivalry. As Spider-Man and the second Green Goblin, we see a different side of Harry Osborn, one more relatable than normal, and one side of Peter Parker, one more strange and violent than before. Throughout the story, Harry tortures and scares Peter Parker in every aspect of his life, and Peter almost loses it, but even in a one-on-one fight, Harry and Pete are evenly matched. I think many know of the emotional, sad ending, where Harry changes and Pete and him, so to say, make up over their family differences and become friends again, best friends. Number 6 is John Romita Sr.'s first Spider-Man comic, and what a premiere it was in The Amazing Spider-Man issue 39 and 40. Being the very first John Romita Sr. Amazing Spider-Man story, it is a banger where Spider-Man's identity gets found out by the Green Goblin, and then Norman reveals he's the Green Goblin himself. And it leads to one of my favorite Green Goblin vs. Spider-Man fights of all time. This story, issue 40, actually goes through all of their previous battles, and Green Goblin tries to defend himself as to why he hasn't won yet, which I love that someone crazy like him would do that. In the end, Spider-Man wins and gets lucky as well to continue his crime-fighting career, as Norman Osborn actually gets amnesia and returns as just plain old Norman Osborn in the next Amazing Spider-Man comics. In 5th place, and this is mostly because of a personal love for this story, Mysterio being my favorite Spider-Man villain, second favorite villain in all of comics, this tale is in Web Spinner's Tales of Spider-Man issues 1 through 3. This is on the list, kind of because of a personal preference, yeah, but it is also a great story, one of the best and most unique Spider-Man stories I've ever read, one that shows that there are many, may not be so much of a difference between Spider-Man and Mysterio as we once thought. J. Jonah Jameson also has a great moment here. When Mysterio kidnaps him and scares him into thinking he's in hell, Mysterio has a great relatable moment here, like when we sympathize with him about his origin and him having a problem talking to his crush. This happens in between Amazing Spider-Man issues 38 and 39, leading to an amazing-looking Mysterio vs. Spider-Man battle and a funny Stan Lee-like conclusion of the characters. Number 4 is the iconic Master Planner storyline in Amazing Spider-Man 31 through 33. Now, this is the moment Spider-Man really overcame his limit and grew, leading to one of the most iconic comic moments ever, when Spider-Man lifts the rubble off of himself to escape the drowning secret lair. This story also has Peter Parker's first time in college, the first appearances of Gwen Stacy, Harry Osborn, and Miles Warren. The story's plot is Aunt May gets sick because of a blood transfusion Pete gave Aunt May back in issue 10, and now these random henchmen that have just appeared are trying to steal the only cure that can save her. And the main villain of the story is Dr. Octopus, and he escapes the fight another day as well. It is a really fun tale, and it's really important in Peter Parker's life as well, and it's just a really, iconic, amazing issues. The third best Spider-Man story to me has to go to Kraven's Last Time, Web of Spider-Man 31 and 32, Amazing Spider-Man 293 and 294, and the Spectacular Spider-Man 131 and 132. This is one of the most widely beloved Spider-Man stories, and arguments can be made that it is actually the best one, and I love it so much. The main theme of the story is death. It has Spider-Man get buried alive, and Kraven commits suicide in the very end. It all even opens up with Spider-Man in the black suit still, arriving at a small-time thug's funeral. There are great moments in the story for Kraven the Hunter. Usually he isn't seen as an A-list villain, and even with him not being in my top 10 Spider-Man villains list, this adventure shows Kraven as deadly and a super scary threat. And, to make it all the better, Kraven the Hunter really actually wins and beats Spider-Man in his eyes. What a shocking story, one of the few really dark Spider-Man comics, and it still works. My second favorite ever is in the Amazing Spider-Man issue 198 through 200, having the return of the burglar who shot Uncle Ben, the man who unintentionally created Spider-Man, returns, with my favorite Spider-Man villain Mysterio having a big role here also. I recently reread this, and wow, it really is one of my favorite Spider-Man tales. There's so much greatness going on, Mysterio as the villain, Spider-Man's history being retold, a little bit of a dark adventure, and surprises galore. With Aunt May being revealed to be alive, Mysterio and the burglar from Amazing Fantasy 15 work together. Spider-Man is in a rage-induced hunt for answers. This was a great 200th issue moment. This has also the final conclusion we never needed, but I loved, between Spider-Man and the burglar, leading to a surprise and dark ending. And my favorite, my number one, the greatest Spider-Man story ever, featuring the final confrontation between Spider-Man and Venom, The Amazing Spider-Man issues 374 and 375. Oh yeah, my friends, this is my favorite Spider-Man and Venom story. It is really good and so much fun, and it looks amazing, and it is a very important time in Spider-Man's life with his parents alive, apparently, and Venom is here at his strongest. The end of issue 375 is legendary, honestly. I wish something like this was shown at the beginning of the Venom movie in 2018. I think that would have been awesome. Spider-Man, Venom, and the Wild Pack all fight each other in an abandoned carnival while it's snowing. And yes, at the very end, Spider-Man and Venom came to an agreement at the end to never search down and fight each other ever again, really. That they would both live their separate lives if they don't do anything like murderous again. Which I know Spider-Man didn't, but Venom kind of blames him for his bad life. But anyway. The art is really cool here. Probably my favorite, my second favorite designs for Venom, especially, or not design, sorry, my artist for Venom. I mean, this story is just amazing. It was my favorite Venom story on my top 5 best Venom stories list, and it is my favorite Spider-Man story as well. So there we go. Those are my top 25 Spider-Man stories. A little bit flustered there. I hope you guys liked this as a 1,000 subscriber special. It was really fun to make and reminisce through Spider-Man's history, and I'm glad you have subscribed and watched this whole video. All these stories show why Peter Parker is my favorite character ever. He struggles even with his powers and definitely has a super epic rogues gallery. I hope you guys list some more awesome stories down below. In the future of this channel, expect more of my most popular series like More Complete History of's Forgotten Spider-Man Rogues, Top 5 Covers, and especially Top 5 Stories. And when it comes to suggestions, I have them all in my head still and will do them. I just have plans for them specifically, like the top 5 best Black Cat and Silver Sable stories. And in full, I plan to finish off the top 5 stories lists for Spider-Man villains like for Hobgoblin, Carnage, Hammerhead, and Tombstone. And yeah, I know there are others like the Jackal, the Spider Slayers, Enforcers, the Tinkerer, Rose, and some other like anti-heroes, which I do want to do, like Prowler, Puma, Rocket Racer, you guys know. So having that on my channel will be great. And that is all. What a fun video once again. I thank you all so much for 1,000 subscribers. It is crazy I have hit that mark on YouTube with my videos. Thank you all so much for watching, and have a great day.